All right, what is up, everyone? Back here at the desk. Again, looking at another lowercase study, looking at the upper loop, the L today. I don't know if I'll make videos for every single letter in the upper loop family, which would be the L, the B, F, H, and K. I might really just do this L one and then let you kind of go at it with the other forms, those other letters. But I think the L gives us plenty to talk about and plenty to think about. So, in interest of time and simplicity, we'll just focus on the L today. I will say that I've kind of been acting like I know what I'm talking about in these previous videos. This is part of a series. You can check the description of this video. You'll find the playlist where I have the other videos. You should watch those first if you have not yet. But I kind of been acting like I know what I'm talking about in these videos, but really this is just my kind of my best guesses and my experimentation and me just kind of sharing what I've learned or where I'm at right now and what I think is helping me and what I think might help you. I don't really know if that's the case or not, but I definitely get value out of sharing this stuff, and it seems like some people get value out of taking it in. So please be skeptical, and I say that now because I'm getting to forms now that I clearly do not have a full understanding of. Like I think I have the I down pretty pat, the lowercase I, in terms of understanding the form and how it works. I'm sure there's something I could still learn about it, but when I get into these upper loops, I clearly do not have an understanding of that, and I know that because I cannot execute this form with any type of consistency right now. I've obviously improved it over the couple years that I've been studying business penmanship, but it still has a long way to go in terms of just consistency of form and execution. So I just wanted to throw that up front. I thought that was worth the time to kind of make that little disclaimer. But with that, let's get into the form review. And I have two L's here. A little different, and this kind of, well, we'll get into why I have two here. The first one here on the left is more of an ideal form. So I think this is the form that everybody wants to achieve. And the one on the right is kind of the one that was often taught, or the one that you'll often see in business penmanship, in practical penmanship. And I'll explain why this one is more ideal and this one is more practical. Red lines here. I have my connective slants here, which control these entry strokes and exit strokes. I don't have them here, but they're there in theory. And then I have our main slant on the downstroke, which is 52 degrees. Connective slant is 29. All right, I might have done 30 for this video. And you can see the difference here is that this downstroke, this main slant stroke is bisecting the upper loop, and then it's also falling in line with this downstroke here before the exit stroke. And over here, the main slant is really off to the left, and the downstroke of the loop is on the slant, and so is the downstroke here at the bottom. So that is the key difference between these two L's, and you can see that with the one where the main slant bisects the loop, the entire loop itself is on slant. Hope you can see that. And then with this more practical L, the loop itself is actually flatter than our main slant. So it's kind of going off in this direction, maybe around, 48 degrees or 50 degrees. Maybe less, I don't know. I'm not good at eyeballing degrees, but it's flatter. Hopefully you can see it goes off in this direction. And our main slant is here. So actually the back of this loop is on slant. And this is easier to execute for a couple reasons. So to get this form on the left, to get this whole loop on slant as well as this downstroke here before the exit stroke, you actually need to make this turn up here, and when you're coming down the back of this, you need to curl it back to the right. And then as you get really close to this X height, which is right here, you actually need to make a curve back to the left to get this downstroke down here on the same slant line that the loop is on. Hopefully you can see that and understand that, and really just think about it and as I always encourage you, draw this out yourself. Take the time to do that, and try to make an L where this loop is bisected by the main slant, and the same main slant line follows this downstroke here, this before the exit stroke, below the loop, I guess you could say. And if you try to draw that out, you'll see how you have to give it some curve back this way as you're coming down here. You have to curve back to the left to get that on slant. So you can see how that would be a very complicated motion to come up, coming down. You're curling back to the right, coming back towards the main slant, and then as you approach the main slant, you're kind of just easing back into it by curling back to the left. So it's this weird motion where you're moving to the right, but then you're moving back to the left as you come down on here. So if you think about that, if you're a writer, if you practice this stuff, I think you'll understand why that would be difficult. And then why this is more practical, because you're giving up maybe the beauty or the symmetry or the geometrical harmony of being on slant with the entire loop. You're giving that up, but your back of your loop is still on slant, so that still plays well with the geometry and it still looks nice. And you're just coming straight down all the way to the bottom. You don't need to make this curve back to the left to get on slant. You slowly approach the slant line as you come down from the top of the loop, and then once you get on slant, you stay on slant and you come back. You might also realize that one of the hardest parts of this letter is this exit stroke, and that's a hard part in any part of penmanship, whether it's an I, any letter that has this exit stroke where you're coming down on slant, and then you're doing this really tight transition to a connective stroke. It's a very fast, tight transition. It's hard to do. And when you're coming at it, the more you come at it from this angle, the easier it is. And you can see how if I keep coming down and on slant, this is easier than trying to curl back this way and then go this way. Maybe if I draw this a little bit, it's easier to make this turn like this than as opposed to coming like that, which is kind of an exaggeration of what you're doing in number 1 over here versus number 2. You're coming up, and then again, exaggeration, but you can see how I curl back to the left, and it just makes, not only is it hard to curl back to the left like that, it makes it harder to do this exit stroke. So long story short, we have an ideal form and a practical form. I think it helps to keep this form in mind and to shoot for this form. That's my current thought process. I don't know if that's 100% true, but my current thought process is let's shoot for that. And if we get something that looks more like this, that's fine. That looks great. This is very workable. It's beautiful. It's a great result. So, and if we can get to where we're making them like this, that's fine. I mean, if anybody here is thinking about getting into ornamental penmanship, Spencerian type stuff, this is the form you're going to want to make with that, and it's a little easier to make it by doing a pen lift in this, but I'm not going to get into that. My current thought process, again, to reiterate, let's shoot for the ideal form, and if we get it, great, but if we end up with something like number 2, that's still really great too. So that is kind of the review of the form. As far as movement goes, this is a complicated movement. It really has shown me how much I have to grow in terms of, I don't know if mental stamina or mental dexterity or kind of just holding multiple movements in my brain at once, or maybe even say in my arm. I don't think I need to be thinking consciously about making these movements as I do, but there's a lot going on here, and I think that's why it's such a difficult letter to execute. A lot of people have trouble with this letter. Everybody I know, finds this letter difficult. I don't know anybody that finds it easy. But it is something that, it starts with this, this nice forearm movement. You're down here, you're kind of pure forearm movement, and then as you approach the X height, moving more into an upper arm, shoulder movement. And that really stretches out. You'll notice how this continues off slant, so we're not getting on slant here at the X height. We're continuing our thing, but we're curling up this whole time, and that really extends and stresses that upper arm movement. I think there's a lot of There's a lot of movement here that is very uncomfortable if you're still training your arm muscles to write with your arm. And I think it's something that needs to be worked on, is that I need to work on still, to get a nice smooth movement up here. It's very easy to continue out to the right with this letter. If I just do one, it's very easy to get really flat and want to have a really long entry, or a long first half of this upper loop. Ignore the dog. You want to have more. That was a good one right there. I just did the stem there. I didn't finish it. You want to really feel the move up, the curl up. Okay? And then as you approach this top, there has to be a slowing at the top. I mean, there has to be. There doesn't have to be technically, but you're making such a tight turn. It seems like there has to be some slowing. I'll talk about rhythm in a second when I get into executing this letter. But as you come down again, it's a lot of very similar to just a straight pull down the main slant, but you are using a little more forearm movement, because as you can see, I'm coming off in this direction, and you can see this is kind of a natural forearm movement at the top. If I think of this as the top of just the very top of the L, as I come in, this is a largely forearm movement, and then you really got to pull with the shoulder to get down on slant. So this is that forearm section, and then down on slant is just that straight push-pull movement. But yeah, as you come down, you're coming back to the slant line. I think that's the way to think about it. You've kind of went around the slant line. You've touched it at various points, so you're on slant here and you're on slant here for a moment in time. Hopefully that makes sense. You kind of hit it as the main slant is kind of an asymptote to this upper loop. And then you're just coming back to it at the bottom. Then you're obviously finishing with this exit turn, which I just did there. So let's get into some exercises on this letter. I mean, obviously working on your eyes. Hopefully you can see you have this I form here in the L. And really you should see that I form in the L when you make the L. So it doesn't hurt to review the I. With a lot of letters, it doesn't hurt to review the I. This is no different here. Just your standard ovals and push-pulls, running ovals and push-pulls to warm up. These are obviously two movements that are featured prominently in this letter. The oval part would be the loop part, but also your exit and entry strokes. I mean, the oval is everything, as far as I can tell. But then the push-pull, another running push-pull drills, that's the back of your L. That's pulling that L down. You really want to feel that when you're pulling the L down, that type of movement. So, as always, warming up with these drills is a good idea. Then you can move into the combined oval and push-pull. So that'd be something like this. I'll do it bigger. And you can do the oval first or the push-pull first. Might not even hurt to do both. And I'm working in this direct motion. I should have said that. It's counterclockwise motion, because that's the movement of this letter. Great little warm-up to do that combined one. And then once you're ready to start doing some more L kind of direct exercises, you can basically do a nice transition into that by doing some ovals like this, followed by some L loops. I'll do it smaller here. Do as many as you can before you run out of room. I will note, I do have my slant lines down here on this paper in pencil. I highly recommend that, having those down. This is a letter that most people tend to write flat. like that. As you can see, here's my slant line here. And this one's very flat. So recommend having slant lines down as you practice, and then practicing without slant lines as well, and then checking your work with your protractor. So do some with slant lines, do some without slant lines, and then check and say, all right, did I hit slant? Am I too flat? You're probably going to be too flat. So yeah. Also, I've been thinking about doing some more vertical kind of oval work and vertical L's just to warm up. Just because I have such a tendency to lay these down flat, I kind of want to get my arm feeling like, I don't know, this is one of those things that I've been thinking about, and I'm not sure it's helpful or not, but it's just something I've been experimenting with. It's kind of the concept of a baseball player that swings with a weighted donut before they go to the plate. So they basically add weight to their bat, take some practice swings, and then once they take the weight off, the bat feels really light, and they feel like they can make faster cuts without the weight on there. And this is kind of the same thing. It's like, all right, let's exaggerate the slant of this letter to make it really vertical, and then doing it on slant doesn't feel so vertical. Because that's the problem, is that there's some part of this, doing this on slant requires some control in the upper arm that I just don't have yet. And I'm trying to figure out how I can obtain that. And I feel like doing some more vertical stuff is helping to kind of train those muscles to be more controlled in that vertical direction. But we'll see where that leads me. Give it a try. Same thing with the push-pull, just like the oval to the L. You can do push-pulls and then transition into L's. Another thing I should note, just a basic form thing that I forgot to mention really, is that the crossing of this loop happens at the X height. So you might want to line your paper or use graph paper or whatever where you can check that. So let's say if I was working at this, this is my X height here. You can see this crossing is too low. My X height's up here and I cross down here. So that one was pretty close. Just another thing to consider. So there's lots of other things you can do. Please experiment, try things out. That's just a few ideas as far as drills go to get this letter down and to kind of help you condition your muscles in your arm to make these movements, to make this form. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the rhythm of this letter, which I'm still really trying to figure out. And my initial thoughts is like, all right, there has to be a slowing up here at the top. And then there has to be a checking or a slowing here at the bottom. So I mean, the other way you could do it is just to do it kind of in one motion at the top and even one motion at the bottom. That kind of more haphazard motion. Or with the checking, it would look more like this. You can really see the difference, and I just don't know. That's why I said my disclaimer earlier. I really would love to hear any input by people that have been experimenting with this, but I feel like it needs to have this little bit of checking action like that, kind of like this pendulum action, where your kind of max speed is somewhere in here, and then you slow as you get to the top, and then your max speed is somewhere in here, then you slow as you get down here, and then you exit. Hopefully you can see the difference between this and this. Now you can make good L's. I mean, these aren't terrible. Those are both good L's both ways. So that's why I'm not sure. It's easier for me to do it this way, this fast way, for what it's worth. It's easier in terms of execution, line quality, but in terms of form, it seems like this way seems to suffer, and I can be a little more accurate by kind of adding that rhythm to it. So Who knows? Another thing I've been experimenting with and thinking about is the position of my paper. And I think I'll end it with this. Ideally, I would love to write by having my paper in one position with a certain angle to my arm and never have to change the angle of the paper this way. I think that's very practical. You can just imagine writing. You want to write across like this with the paper, and you never want to change. You don't want to go this way for one letter, this way for another letter. But the more I've thought about how the arm works and the angles on different forms, I already kind of think like capitals, I might want my paper turned more this way, where my arm is more perpendicular. Hopefully you can see that to the bottom edge of the paper. If I want to make an A, which you could barely see there. And then for lowercase letters, I kind of want to turn it this way so the paper is more upright. So now you can see my arm is kind of cutting across the paper in this direction as opposed to this direction. And for these, this allows you to use more forearm movement in all your forms. And it definitely makes this L a little easier. But I'm not sure I'm not sure that's my final goal with this letter. I'm not against little tricks like this. I'm not against making things work. I don't have this insane purity notion about how things need to be done, and my paper always needs to be in the same spot, the same angle. So I'm not against doing this. I haven't fully explored it. I kind of already understand some of the downfalls of turning my paper just for a certain form. It interrupts the flow of my writing. The more you turn the paper this way, the less writing zone you have. So I can only write like a couple letters before I need to move the paper in this way. So it kind of impinges or inhibits my motion in the horizontal direction. So yeah, there's just some things that I'm not sure about in terms of that little trick, but it's something that has helped me make the form in the short term. And if I really want to nail an L, that's kind of my go-to move right now. Not proud of it, but I'm also not ashamed of it because at the end of the day, I want something that works, and I'm not against really anything that makes it work. So unless there's just some disadvantages that I'm not seeing and it's affecting, my entire script or some other aspect of my script, then I'm not cool with that. So, all right, I think I went way too deep enough for this video. This, again, it's a difficult letter. I'm open to ideas and thoughts about what I've shown you here. I'm interested in any questions or comments that you've had about this letter. Give it a try. Do the study, do the drawings. Find an exemplar and really work it out. Get your protractor out and see what you can draw, and then start playing with the movement. It's really interesting, and I'm just gonna have to keep working on it, keep exploring to get a real full understanding of this letter. So thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe if you haven't done that as well. You can check me out on Instagram @PerfectBiscuits. My website is perfectbiscuits.com, which you can find a link to send me an email if you want to do that, or links to my other social media profiles. So yeah, thank you so much. Leave a comment, and we'll see you next time. Check out the description. I'm going to put some links. Since I don't really have a full understanding of this, I'm going to find a few links of some people that can make some great L's and kind of their thoughts on it. There might be images, there might be videos. Other contemporary penmen just kind of exploring this L as well. So definitely check out the description and see those kind of resources, I'll call them, or kind of supplemental study that I would love you to take part in. So look for that. Thanks for watching. Bye.